This is the Galaxy S20 Fan Edition. Not the most exciting phone of the year, but probably one of Samsung's most important. But what it lacks in its ability to be attention-grabbing, it more than makes up for with its affordable price tag. All while delivering on the most beloved features of the S20 series. Of course, a cheaper price tag means some compromises have to be made, no? So in this video, we're going to take a look at some of the choices Samsung made, and whether or not the S20 FE is deserving to be part of this high-end lineup. Or is it just a fancy name plastered on a mid-range phone? Hi, I'm MICHAELJOSH. You're watching GadgetMatch. This is our Samsung Galaxy S20 FE review. GadgetMatch is all about helping you find the right device to match your needs. So if this is the kind of content that you enjoy, consider subscribing to this YouTube channel and help us get to our next milestone. Unlike the rest of Samsung's S20 lineup that come with black boxes, the S20 FE comes in this white box. The text styling is very much the same, and if you look closely, there are icons engraved on this box. Packaging order is pretty standard. Waiting for you when you remove the cover is the S20 FE. And what color did we get? Cloud Navy. Nice. The S20 FE is available in 6 incredible color options: red, white, and navy, lavender, mint, and orange. Let me know which color you choose by sounding off in the comments section below. Also in the box, a SIM tray ejection pin, quick start guide, a 15-watt travel adapter, and a USB-C to A cable. So what makes the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE worthy of its billing as a member of the S20 series? Well, on the outside, you'll find it shares the same design ID as the S20, S20 Plus, and the S20 Ultra. The same rounded corners, the same shaped aluminum frame. Buttons, ports, antenna lines, they're all in the same place too. It's got the same Infinity O display with a punch hole for that selfie camera, the much-loved 120Hz refresh rate, the same top-of-the-line processors, Snapdragon 865 for the 5G variant, and Exynos 990 for the LTE-only model. A pretty large battery, stereo speakers, an IP rating for water and dust resistance, even a micro SD card slot for expandable memory. It has triple cameras too, wide, ultra-wide, and 3x zoom, with night mode, pro mode, and space zoom. But of course, for it to be priced $300 less than the S20, Samsung has definitely had to make some cuts. Thankfully, I believe they made the right ones. First, its body is made of polycarbonate plastic instead of Gorilla Glass. Just like what I say when I reviewed the Note 20, plastic, when done right, doesn't have to look cheap. The same applies to the S20 FE, and as a plus, the color options are exciting. That said, the all-glass S20 definitely feels more premium. I'd say with a case on, you wouldn't even notice the difference. But then again, with a plastic back, you probably don't even need a case. Second, while the S20 FE boasts of a 120Hz display, its resolution maxes out at Full HD+, which isn't a deal breaker either, because while the S20, S20 Plus, and S20 Ultra all have Quad HD+ displays, if you want to enjoy 120Hz goodness, you're stuck at Full HD Plus anyway. Third, speaking of displays, the S20 FE has a flat display, which to some is actually better. Notice too that it's slightly larger than the S20, almost as big as the S20 Plus because of its larger bezels. It's still a very good size for one-handed use, and the bigger screen is always a plus when it comes to watching videos or playing games. Fourth, the S20 FE has half the amount of RAM as the regular S20. While that might seem like a lot, for everyday tasks like browsing the web, watching YouTube videos, or scrolling through Instagram, this isn't gonna matter much. Where RAM really spells the difference is in terms of multitasking, or wanting to quickly switch between several open apps one after the other. That said, because it shares the same top-of-the-line processor as its more expensive siblings, it can still do the heavy lifting performance-wise. In fact, during my few days with the phone, it worked just like any other, whether that be chilling on the couch with some Disney Plus, catching up on some news, or dominating the Asphalt 9 racetrack. I'm not sure if this next one is a cut per se. Instead of using Qualcomm's ultrasonic fingerprint scanner, which is supposedly more advanced tech, but in reality has been a big sore spot for some S20 users, the S20 FE uses an optical, still under-display scanner from a company called Goodix, which also makes them for the OnePlus 8 series and Huawei's P40 Pro. It's hard to say, but in the limited time I used the phone alongside the S20, I made it a point to unlock both phones with my fingerprints more frequently than normal. And while that was never a problem for me, anecdotally, the S20 FE unlocks more consistently than the S20. You know, when I got this phone, the thing I was most excited to test out were its cameras. And while it has the same triple camera setup, offering you wide, ultra-wide, and telephoto, it doesn't have the exact same hardware, so results are going to be slightly different. But before we go into a comparison and samples, let's review the FE's camera setup. A 12-megapixel ultra-wide camera with a 120-degree field of view, a 12-megapixel wide camera, the same hardware that's on the S20 and S20 Plus, and an 8-megapixel telephoto camera. All right, let's dive straight into our comparison. We're only doing an S20 FE versus S20 comparison today. The S20 FE's photos will always be on the left. Okay, let's start. As October approaches, fall is in the air, and on the ground, the leaves are starting to get yellow. As both phones share the same wide-angle camera, it's really tough to tell the difference. HDR on both phones kick in, so the clouds are not blown out. This similarity between the two phones continues, which reminds me, I should probably get some pumpkins. Might not have taken these from the same exact angle, but they're pretty similar. Maybe there's a bit more vibrance and saturation in the S20's photo. Nope, I'm not in Thailand, but this tuk-tuk does make me miss Asia. Again, it's hard to tell both photos apart, as well as in these next two photos, where I shot to see if depth of field was different on the main lens. But both photos came out pretty much equal. Next, I tested for low light performance. This shot was taken close to dusk as the light coming through my window started to fade. Both did a similar good job with very little noise at this light level. The sun sets even further, not the best time for portraits, but here's an attempt anyway. Decent similar jobs by both phones, but if we're nitpicking, if we zoom into Chai's face, there's much more noise on the S20 FE's photo. As it gets darker, night mode kicks in, and this is where you'll notice a difference. Theoretically, since the hardware is the same, it shouldn't be the case, but the S20 seems to expose longer than the S20 FE in night mode. As luck might have it, I'm back at the Thai restaurant, this time for dinner with my friends. Apart from the more vibrant reds in the tuk-tuk on the S20's photo, both photos are almost identical. There's also much more punch in the S20's version of this food shot. The longer exposure times also lead to brighter photos here, of these flowers during blue hour, and in this extreme low light test in my bathroom. Although in this last shot, the longer exposure didn't necessarily produce the better photo, despite it being brighter. Notice the soft focus and the purple fringing on the edges of the photograph. Now let's move over to the ultra-wide-angle lens. The S20 FE has a slightly wider field of view, as is evident in this photo where it captured more of the FedEx truck. The hardware differences are obvious in these side-by-side photos, as both phones handle the same scene differently. For example, in this shot of a brick building, the mood is brighter on the S20's photo, while the S20 FE's shot looks dull and gloomy. While in this example, it's warmer versus cooler. Finally, let's take a look at the 3x optical zoom lens. In this case, it was really a toss-up between the two, depending on the photo. On this muggy day, this photo of an air dancer atop a car wash was exposed better on the S20, but the S20 FE's photo was brighter in this shot of this colorful porch. The phones look identical in this zoom shot of a flower, while the FE's looked less noisy in this nightscape low light shot. I think the point here is that while on paper the S20 has a more superior camera to the S20 FE, the differences are very minimal, not enough for S20 FE users to feel like they're getting an inferior smartphone camera. It's worth pointing out that the S20 FE can only shoot videos in 4K, but I don't think most users will mind or need 8K. I personally don't. Up front, the S20 FE actually has a better selfie camera, which makes sense based on the user this phone targets. Here are some sample selfies during the day and at night. Fans will love that the S20 SE packs the same 4,500 mAh battery as on the S20 Plus. During my time with the phone, it lasted me a solid day of moderate use, with some left over for the next morning. About 6 to 7 hours of screen on time, switching between Wi-Fi and cellular. The fact that it delivers on battery life is a big deal for me. It's 2020, and for any top-of-the-line smartphone, I expect to be able to get through a whole day without needing to charge. Phone only ships with a 15-watt charger in the box, but it does support 25-watt fast charging. With the bundled charger, the phone got to 13% in 10 minutes, 36% in 30, and a full charge in 90. Samsung's 25-watt charging adapter is an optional $34.99 purchase, although I found it on Amazon for $13.99. We'll put a link in the description box below. With that charger, you can get to 23% in 10 minutes, 50% in 30 is claimed, and 100% in 65. The S20 FE also supports Samsung's 15-watt wireless charger and reverse wireless charging in case you need a quick top-up for your Galaxy Buds Live. Before we wrap up, it's time for some quick-fire Q&A. What's the difference between 60 and 120 Hz? Is it useful? I wouldn't call it useful, but it does make the experience faster and snappier. And once you've tried it, it's really hard to go back. What are your thoughts on Samsung still using Exynos in some regions and Snapdragon in others? From what I understand, 5G variants of the S20 FE all run Snapdragon 865. Some markets will also offer a cheaper LTE model, and those run Exynos 990. Personally, it's Samsung's call to put whatever processor they want on their smartphones. They just need to ensure that the experience is the same. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case in 2020, but if you don't live in North America and have been dying for an S20 that runs the Snapdragon 865 processor, then now's the chance to do so. Joshua Red asks, the sound. That's not really a question, but if you're asking about sound quality, the S20 sounds better and louder. And that's not saying much because the S20 series pales in comparison to the likes of the OnePlus 8 Pro and the LG V60. Is the S20 FE still in the flagship realm? TBH, I've been trying to use the word flagship less and less because that's really subjective, but for all intents and purposes, the answer is yes. Is the back panel the same as the Note 20? I don't know for certain, but it definitely feels like it. So, is the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE your gadget match? The arrival of the S20 FE is a sign of good things to come. If for anything, it's an acknowledgement that users who have come to love the S series just aren't willing to pay $1,000 anymore, and I hope that users overwhelmingly embrace the S20 FE so that next year, Samsung releases a follow-up, or maybe even better, adjusts the base price for the S30. That would be the ideal scenario. This year, we've seen more and more manufacturers paying attention to this abandoned segment, so to speak. And it's been interesting to see where they chose to make cuts. Samsung actually tried last year with the Galaxy S10e, but it had one less camera and a not-so-good battery, which I feel weren't the right cuts to make, but the intent was there. This year, we've seen companies offer a less prestigious processor, the likes of the premium mid-range Snapdragon 765G, seen on the LG Velvet, OnePlus Nord, and most likely the upcoming Pixel 5, which isn't a bad idea either. Both of these approaches are acceptable. At the end of the day, it all boils down to what you need as a consumer, and in this case, I think Samsung did a good job in choosing the cuts that it needed to make. By satisfying the needs of the spec-obsessed who want the best processor and the fastest display, and those of the everyday user who will benefit most from long battery life and an almost as good camera, all at a more wallet-friendly $700. And for that, it deserves the GadgetMatch seal of approval. My only suggestion here is in terms of naming, and Apple's got all of this figured out. Samsung has gone through many different naming conventions for its more affordable S-series device. The S10 Lite and the S10e, for example, were confusing to say the least. I think what needs to happen next year is for Samsung to call the S20 FE's follow-up just the S30, and then use its Ultra moniker for its Pro series. For users who want more than what the average consumer needs, and is willing to pay the premium that comes along with it. That said, the S20 FE is closer to what the S10 Lite and the S10e needed to be. And regardless of what they're saying online, I believe there's definitely a place in the market for it today. But what do you think? Will you go out and get the S20 FE, or does it not match up to what your expectations are of an S20 device? Let me know in the comment section below, and as always, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Hit that bell icon while you're at it so that you get notified as soon as we post new videos. Follow me on social media for all the behind the scenes fun stuff. And as always, make GadgetMatch.com your daily habit. Until the next video, I'm MICHAELJOSH. Thanks for dropping by.